the gateway of hope. Heal the brokenness. Console the heart. Kindle the spirit. Enrich the soul. Shalom Tidings. Catholic Charismatic Magazine. Get your free copy. Subscribe at shalomworld.org/tidings. Email us at tidings@shalomworld.org. Shalom Tidings, the gateway of hope.
Oh, hey, welcome back. Where you been? I've been waiting for you. I mean, come on, hurry up, scooch up your chair. Let's get going. We've got some important stuff to talk about today. Most people that I talk to, I'm really surprised. They have come to this idea that the devil doesn't exist, which is really kind of strange. I remember giving this talk to a bunch of Catholic school teachers in this all-girls Catholic school in New Jersey. And I was doing an in-service for them, and we were going through the whole retreat. And all of a sudden, I made a reference to demons and how demons influence our kids' lives, particularly the girls, because the teachers are working with the girls. And this woman, who I later found out was the vice principal for the school, said, "Demons? Wait a second. Are you telling me that there's demons? I thought that was just something that we just saw on television. You mean they're really real?" And I looked at her. I was kind of surprised, but then really, upon thinking about it a little bit more, why should I be so surprised? Demons are very real. Satan is real. And we've got to come to a better understanding of who our enemy is, because we want to unpack his plan. As I shared before, I'm talking with my kids, Satan has a plan to keep us from going to heaven. And so, like anything we do, if there are predators or there is an enemy against the United States, for example, will not our military go out there and begin to define who is our enemy and what are their traits and what are their capabilities and abilities so that we can defend ourselves? Well, we should be doing the same thing, because we do have an enemy, a spiritual enemy. And when I say spiritual, I'm talking about a being, a very big, strong, powerful being who has the ability to deceive us very easily. And so we need to come to a better understanding of who he is. When we start breaking open the idea of Satan, let's just kind of lay the landscape for him. If you look at Isaiah 14, let me give you this passage here. Read this passage for you from Isaiah 14, 12 through 14. It says this: "How you are fallen from heaven, O day star, son of dawn. How you are cut down to the ground, you who laid the nations low. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the mount of assembly, on the heights of Zaphon, and I will ascend to the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High." This was Lucifer, a cherubim of God, who decided that he didn't want to serve God anymore, and he certainly didn't want to have to serve humans. And he decided he wanted to do his own thing. So he convinced a third of the angels of heaven to follow him, to give allegiance to him. And there was a great battle, of which that's how we came to know Saint Michael the Archangel, who had the initial battle with Lucifer and cast him out of heaven. Now, when I ask this question to most people, I ask, well, once he was cast out of heaven, where was Satan kicked out to? And it's funny, because most people tend to think, well, he was cast to hell, but that's not true. He was cast to earth. And so we need to be aware of the fact that there is a devil. He has demon cohorts that work with him. They are very powerful and deceiving. Now, granted, since Jesus Christ died on the cross, most of their power has been defeated. But the power that they still have left to deceive is very strong. And so we need to make ourselves aware of the kind of deceptions that he uses in the world paradigm to influence us and to draw us away from God. And you're going to see in the next couple of segments, as we unpack the strategies and plan and characteristics of these demons, what they can do, just how influential they are. And if you're like me, you're going to come to realize just how powerfully deceived you have been by what they've done in your lives. So pull up a chair, get yourself ready, buckle up, because we're going in and we're going to take a look at the enemy. Gotcha, sucker. You've been hacked. So, this is exactly what the enemy wants to do. Just like a computer programmer who wants to get in through the web into someone else's computer and control their computer and gain access to their vital information or whatever they want to get access to, in the same way that a hacker like me who would want to get in there and get your stuff, that's exactly what demons want to do. They want to gain access of your soul. They would love nothing more than to gain access of your soul. So, think of it this way. If, as a father of 5 girls, and you wanted to come up against me, but you couldn't hurt me because I'm too strong for you, the next best way that you could hurt me is to get my little girls. Well, that's the same as Satan with God. Oftentimes people think that you've got God here and Satan that's equal to God. That's so not true. You have got God, and then down here you've got Satan, because Satan is a created being. He's not a creator. But so Satan lost the battle, particularly when Jesus died on the cross and rose from the dead. See, when Jesus died on the cross and he rose from the dead, Satan lost control of human beings because they now had a choice again, restored to them. Before they didn't have a choice. Before they couldn't choose to enter God's kingdom because they had to pay the penalty of death. But once Jesus paid the penalty, now they're free to choose. So, what is it that the enemy wants to accomplish? What is it? How are they going to do that? And what are the attributes about them that we need to understand? We want to know who our enemy is and what they're all about. We want to know what they're capable of doing. Well, angels are very intelligent beings. They don't need to sleep. They're very smart. And they watch us. They kind of got our number. They study us in a lot of ways. It's not necessarily the teaching of the church, but my experience has been that in my own life, I've known that there were demons around who really understood and knew what I was all about. It's almost as if, like the same way that I have a guardian angel who's assigned to protect me, to get me to heaven, almost as if I've got demons that were assigned to me because their mission was to get me down, was to take me down. So, what can they do and what do they desire to do? Something that we don't realize about demons is that they have the ability to insert thoughts into our minds, insert thoughts into us to get us to believe, to think that something else. Now, they make it sound like our conscience, so it's not like you hear this weird voice and you're wondering where it's coming from, although that can happen. And people who experience a lot of psychological issues where they hear lots of voices, oftentimes that could very well be the source. At any rate, they're able to insert thoughts into our minds, making it sound like it's us thinking them. The second thing, they can't read our minds because God keeps that ability exclusive to himself for private prayer. So when we're in a room silently praying, he hears our thoughts, our prayers. So what is it about demons that they are capable of doing? Let's understand our enemy. There are 3 forms, 3 ways that they can really insert themselves to kind of manipulate us or to get us to buy into their wishes or wills. The first word is called oppression. They're on the outside of us and they're whispering into us those thoughts. Remember the passage in Scripture where Jesus comes to the apostles and he tells them, guys, we got to go to Jerusalem because I need to go there and I need to die. Remember the altercation between Peter and Jesus? Peter goes to the master and says, Lord, Lord, you can't do that. And what does Jesus say? Satan, get behind me. See, at that point, Jesus wasn't calling Peter Satan. What Jesus was speaking to is the little critter that was right next to him, whispering into Peter's mind, saying, this is what you can't let Jesus do. They're on the outside of us, oppression and speaking into us and trying to coerce our actions and thoughts, getting us to do things that maybe we shouldn't be doing. The second thing is called obsession, where they actually gain access to the inside of us. So, for example, I am interested in kind of in the occult. So I want to go to a store and I want to look at what a deck of tarot cards looks like. I don't want to really have someone read my life or anything, but I just saw I'm going to go and I'm going to buy a deck of tarot cards. The minute that I transfer the money to the attendant there at the cash register, and I give them the money and they give me the deck, I don't even have to open up the deck, unwrap it. The minute that I've transferred the money, I have given permission for a demon of the occult to enter me. Messing around with Ouija boards, having your palm read, going to seances, all of these different things open ourselves up to the spiritual realm and to demons who are around seeking to gain access into our lives. And remember, it's all about getting in and gaining control. So you have oppression, they're on the outside. You have obsession, they've gained access to the inside. And once you got one critter that's on the inside, they try to figure out ways to get more and more inside as soon as possible. One of the ways that they love to gain access is through different types of traumas. My experience, and it's not vast, but my experience around the country in working with individuals who've had some sense of demonization has been through incest. It's been a huge trauma, and that's a lot of places where you can hear lots of whispers and lies. Just to give you an example of them gaining access to the inside of you. The third area, the third form of way that they can influence us and play a major role in our lives is through something that you probably heard most commonly, and that's called possession. You have oppression, obsession, and possession. The difference between obsession and possession is how many demons have gotten on the inside of you, how much control they have over you, and what they're capable of doing through you, the things that they're able to exhibit. Remember, these guys, they have no love for you. They seek only to destroy your soul. They want to take you down with them. They know they've lost. When Jesus rose from the dead, they lost the war. Now the only thing that's left are these little skirmishes, these little battles. And because these battles are real and they're evident, all they want to do is they want to gain control of you and they want to destroy you. So coming up next, what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of their strategies, some of the ways that they practically work their way into us and getting us into live lives to do their will. Excuse me, is your seatbelt fastened? Okay, anyway, we wanted to unpack strategies of Satan and demons for their attempts to try to get us to go back to sin. Remember, as I shared before, like we know from the Garden of Eden and the Genesis chapter 2 story and 3 story, is the name of the game is sin. Their goal is to try to gain control of our souls, of our lives. And the best way to do that is to separate us from God. And so the way to separate us from God is, obviously, through sin. So what are the strategies that Satan wants to use and demons want to use to get us to say no to God? Because that's really how it works. How do we say no to God? Well, they know something about us that we don't really understand as well as we should. And that is that you and I were created. We were hardwired for truth. We were made for the beatific vision. And so God desires that we be in this relationship with us. And so He created us in a way specifically so that we could exist in His very being. And because we're hardwired for sin, for heaven, then the enemy knows that the way that they get us to do that is to not live truth, but to live lies. So they want to get us to begin to start living lies. And they do it in a wide variety of different ways, but lots of different ways using deception. But I'm going to unpack 2 key ways. The first way that they get us to live lies is to get us to buy into a lie thinking that it's true. Now, what I'd like to do is just kind of share with you a little bit about my story. I was the youngest of 4 boys living in Atlanta, Georgia. And during this particular weekend, I had an individual who came, he was a family member who came to visit us for the weekend. And Friday night we had all kinds of fun, lots of noise, volume, just having a good time as a family typically does. And everybody went to bed that night, and when I woke up the next morning, everybody was gone. And I thought, gosh, it's just my mom doing some stuff around the house and it's just me. And I was kind of used to, since I was the youngest of 4 boys, kind of being off by myself. So I used to love to do like a lot of creative things on my own. Like, for example, I used to love to jump on my bike and ride around the neighborhood and shoot missiles from my handlebars. And then I'd blow up cars. Dude, I was good. I never missed. Okay, so either I would go out and shoot missiles from my handlebars, or else I would go down to the basement and I would play army, imaginary army. I'd go down there and it was my job to defend the house against an enemy that had kicked in my back door. And it was my job to protect everyone. So I'd pull out of my imaginary guns and I was shooting, killing the enemy as they were coming in the door. Well, one day I woke up, as I shared, and everybody was gone, so I thought I'll go down to the basement. And I woke up and I went down there and I started to play army. And I'm going room by room, and all of a sudden there was this one part of the basement that we turned into a kind of a rustic bedroom, and a light was on. And I went around the corner, and all of a sudden there was that relative on the bed looking at an adult magazine, and he was just doing stuff. Well, you can imagine. I was shocked. I'm 8.5 years old. I don't understand what's going on. And next thing I know, he says, "Ralph, what are you doing?" "Nothing." I was kind of nervous. "Come here." And then next thing I know, he has me on the bed. We don't need to go into any further detail, but just to say that I was now in a very awkward, uncomfortable situation, an abuse situation. Well, I left that situation. When he said I was done, I started to go up the stairs, and as I was walking up the stairs, I go up the stairs and I hear this voice. And remember, I didn't know that demons could speak, insert thoughts into our minds and make it sound like our conscience. I didn't understand that. But I heard a voice. And in fact, St. Ignatius in his spiritual exercises says that we can hear 3 voices in our head: God through his angels and his saints, demons, and our conscience. Well, that voice comes into my mind, and that voice says, "You know, if you hadn't gone downstairs to play army, that would have never happened." I'm like, well, that's true. That really is true. If I could have gone on my bike and that wouldn't have been a problem. But then the voice went on to say, because you chose to go to the basement, what happened there was your fault. Well, you know, I have this free will, this gift that God gave you and I. And I have a choice. I could reject that thought or I can choose to accept it. And I chose to accept it. And so once I began to accept it, it's like taking a pair of glasses, and all of a sudden I was now looking at the world in an incredibly different way. But I also began to believe that the world was looking at me differently. So you can imagine this poor kid, confused, doesn't know what to do, but now I'm beginning to believe a lie that isn't true. That what happened down there was something that I did, and it was my fault. So I began to feel the shame and the guilt and the pain and all the rest of the garbage that's associated with that. Well, after about 6 months of living that lie, pretending that nothing ever happened, which is a lie, the enemy was ready for me. Because you know, when you hurt and you experience this kind of pain, you have to go on and do something else to either stop the pain. If you can't stop it, you got to numb it. So how was I going to numb the pain? I was down in the basement, this time again playing army, making sure nobody was down there. And as I was down there, I kicked open my brother's closet and began to shoot the enemy, and I flicked on the light, and there were a huge stack, almost as tall as me, of adult magazines. And I remember walking up to the front cover, to the top magazine, and looking at a picture of a woman there. Now I heard 2 voices in my head. The first voice said, "You need to get out of here. This isn't good. You should run. Get away." That was from my guardian angel. But the second voice that I heard was, "You know, this is bad. But you know what? You're not hurting anybody. You're just looking at pictures. Go ahead. It's not a big deal." You see, what they were training me to do was to now create a rational lie, to rationalize a bad behavior so I can make it right. But I want you to understand what happens when it occurs. When you buy into rational lies, it's kind of like you're taking on a temptation, like, well, let me see if I can make this right, but let me show you what happens. When you create a rational lie and you choose to accept it, what happens is you get this nice, cool little bling chain over you, and you notice it's got a loose end. Well, that loose end is not controlled by me. It's controlled by the demon who now has bound me by the lie that I've caught myself into. Like, what alcoholic will just go and, he takes his first drink and says, "Man, I can't wait to become an alcoholic." But that day comes when all of a sudden you make the decision where you no longer need a drink, or you no longer want a drink, you need a drink. And next thing you know, you're bound in a different way. We have all these kinds of lies going through our lives where we've bought into behaviors and activities that we shouldn't have had, that we shouldn't have been living out in our lives. And slowly but surely, as we continue to adhere to these lies, they get bigger and stronger. Like take me for an example. I'm on a business trip now, and I've just had a fight with my wife. And I feel like she doesn't love me. But I'm sitting here in these meetings all day long with this attractive woman, and she says, "Gosh, you're really cool." And all of a sudden she's digging into me and she's saying, wow. And so I say, well, what's the big deal? It's how interesting. She's staying in the same hotel I am. Wow, I wonder how that works. Maybe we should just go out for a drink. I'm not gonna hurt anybody, it's just a drink. And then next thing you know, before you realize it, way long before you had any chance to kind of make any decisions, you realize that you've made some terrible mistakes and you're bound and you're out of control and you need help and you don't know how to get free. Satan and demons are real. And the more we buy into their lies, the more they bind us and hold us captive. But you and I, we were created to be free. So next time when we get back together again, we're going to continue to unpack Satan's plan to hold us bound. We're going to see how he continues to try to keep us bound and how that works within the spectrum of our lives. And I'm going to show you one amazing thing. Just how we were trained by him to reject Jesus Christ every day of our lives. And I'm going to prove it to you. See you then. God bless you. May you have a great day.
Jesus is God. Jesus is Lord. Jesus has the victory.
We all have a call to greatness, a desire for it. We want to do something good.
Now is your time. You could change the world, and the world needs changing, so get busy.
Shalom World, God's own channel.